We're over in the race space and got quite a few cars over here sheltering from the rain, but one of them is a lovely red and black Bugatti, which was herring around the finishing straight just now at a good rate of knots, I think. And this is your car, sir?
Yeah, it's my car, but my dad was driving it.
So you weren't the one doing the wheel spins around the corners on the finishing straight?
No, it was my father was driving it, because my grandfather was here racing in the 20s, and he was here in 26. And my dad raced his cars, and I built this for me, but I thought it'd be nice to have him drive today rather than me. That was all. Well, my granddad was a riding mechanic here in the 20s. He was a riding mechanic for George Newman in Sampson's, and he was here from the sort of early 20s till towards the end of the 20s. So in 26 he was here. He raced in 200-mile race that weekend. And then when he was told he had to get a proper job by my nan and not be involved in motor racing anymore, he wound up running the power station on the Hoover building on the A40. But the people who were the Brooklands set, Earl Howe, Bunny, people like that, came and found him and said, you know, you did French racing cars, can you look after our Bugattis? So he started doing Bugattis beginning of the 30s, really, up until the war. Then obviously the war, he was involved with war work. And after the war, we had a garage in Leinster Mews in London where he kept working for the trade until he got fed up with cars. But my old man was born in 1940, so they kind of didn't really cross over. But we had a Bugatti from before the war, because there was a fighter pilot, who was racing here in a Bugatti, and he wanted spares. So my granddad found a car that had a blown up engine. He turned up one day, a big lorry turned up and said, "Where do you want this car then, mate?" My granddad said, "Well, on the drive." So the tipper went up and all the bits fell out the back of the tipper lorry. And those bits, when he was killed in the Second World War, the pilot, so the family said, keep the bits, we don't want them. So we had that car, which was a 35, and the chassis got given to my uncle, who was 20 years older than my dad. My dad had the engine, and they spent about 30 years arguing about who was going to give who back, the chassis or the engine, to build the car. But eventually my uncle got too old for it, really, so it went to my dad, and that was my dad's 35. And as I say, he raced saloon cars in the 70s, won the British Saloon Car Championship 3 times, beat Walkinshaw and all the various people. And then the oil crisis came along in the mid-70s, so sponsorship got difficult. But at that time, the Bugatti world was kind of opening up, or the old car world was opening up into things like the retrospective Mille Miglia and Targa Florias. The cars suddenly got valuable, and you could earn a living working on them. So we then got back into working on Bugattis full time. So that's from about 1980, and that's what we've done ever since. The old man packed up in 1999. I've run the business since, and that's why I've got Type 51 amongst others. But this is my 51.
That's lovely. Thanks for bringing that down today. It is a beautiful car. I'm sure you've got several more back at the garage there.
Yeah, I've got a Type 35B, which is quite good, and a Brescia 44. But in the workshop, we've got, 25, 30 cars now. So we've got 57 Atlantic and Atalant, everything, pretty much.
These are customer cars being restored or rebuilt?
Yeah, customer cars being restored.
So this car, is it original or a recreation?
It's a recreation mostly. There's some real bits in it, but essentially it's new. I built it for going to Bonneville Speed Week. That's what it's actually been made for. We have raced it. I've raced it at Goodwood, and I've raced it at Cabell Park a few weeks ago. But essentially it's for Bonneville.
So it's based on an original Bugatti?
It's a Bugatti Type 51. As it stands there, it's exactly like an original Bugatti Type 51, except for the exhaust, which is something they used to do in period, put the outside exhaust on, and the cowl for aerodynamics.
The paint scheme actually makes it look, you're talking about Speed Week, it makes it look quite American.
Yeah, there's a bit of an American theme to it, but what it started with is we used to have a Type 35B that we raced in the 90s, which was completely red with black wheels and a red radiator. That was a car my father raced, and we won a lot of VSCC races with it. So when I was building this car, I wanted to have a bit of that in it, hence the black wheels and the red radiator. But also I wanted to go to American. I didn't want it all red because I felt red just looked too much, so I wanted a bit of black. And I thought scallops are pretty traditional Bugatti. You know, funnily enough, there's a 59 in Classic and Sports Car this week, which they've reproduced a 30s colour scheme, which was scallops, very similar to this. So it's just very much a Bugatti way of doing things.
You've done an excellent job on here. I was about to say Bugattis are normally blue, but this one looks strikingly different because it is in the different colour scheme. What sort of performance do you get out of this?
Well, it's got close to 250 brake horsepower, so In a standing kilometre, so from a standing start in a kilometre, it gets to about 140 miles an hour at the end of the kilometre, which is a standing quarter in 12 and a bit seconds.
So it's pretty rapid. I'm not sure I'd fancy doing 140 miles an hour with my head sticking up above the cockpit like that.
No, they feel wonderful. At speed, they feel really good. We're pulling close to 145 miles an hour into Copse at Silverstone.
Wow, that's pretty good performance.
At Bonneville, we're aiming first year for 150 plus, 155, 158, something like that. But the ultimate achievement is going to be 170 miles an hour. That's what I'm going for.
With you driving or your dad?
No, with me driving. No.
Your dad was pretty good out there today. Were you a bit worried about him when the back was sliding out?
No, not at all. I mean, he was British saloon car champion 3 times in the early 70s.
Oh, really? What's his name?
Ivan Dutton.
Ivan Dutton, that does ring a bell, yes. And you are?
Tim Dutton.
Tim Dutton. Thank you very much.
No problem.